Let's talk about zero-sum bias today.
The zero sum is very binary.
Yes, it is. It's very binary. It is, yeah. And before we get going, I wanted to actually have, if anyone is listening or anyone is watching this, I wanted to ask some questions first off. So just to get the mindset around what is zero-sum biased thinking or the zero-sum game. So true or false? You don't have to answer this, Paul. I'm just going to ask this for the people that are watching, right? So do you believe, true or false, one person's gain is another person's loss? Meaning, if you lose, I get to gain, or if I lose, you're gaining. Is that true or false? Another question. The advantage for one side always means a loss for the other side. Is that true or false? Another question is, true or false? Is there a finite, so a limited amount of work that is available, be that in your career, your profession, whatever it is? And this is the last one. Do you believe that to maximize your profit, you can only do so at the cost of minimizing your opponents or your competitors' profits? So if you have the answers to that, put in true, false, yes or no, let us know, right? Because that's what zero-sum thinking is about. Zero-sum thinking is about if one person gains, someone else has to lose. So that's what we're going to talk about today, Paul. You want to share some thoughts on that?
I just, as you were doing that, what brought us to this discussion of the zero-sum bias and thinking is, I think, is a lot to do with AI and the stuff we've discussed with ChatGPT. I used Haley's AI. I must just say that because it's, but I know some friends has gone back using ChatGPT. But I was just asking ChatGPT a question about the zero-sum game in terms of in relationship to AI, because a lot of people have this fear of losing their work, losing jobs. I mean, we have, what's his name, Sam Altman from OpenAI going in front of Congress answering questions, and also saying he doesn't really know. I mean, there should be government oversight and rules, etc. But ChatGPT response is interesting. We're talking about the zero-sum game, the fear of limited resources. And it says, quite interesting, overcoming the fear of AI requires a shift in perspective from zero-sum game to a positive-sum game. In a zero-sum game, there's a fixed amount of resources that must be competed for. And this type of thinking can lead to the fear of AI because people may perceive AI as taking away jobs and resources. However, in a positive-sum game, there is potential for both parties to benefit and gain more resources. AI has the potential to create more jobs and opportunities, and it can also improve efficiencies and productivity in many industries. Anyway, that's a short version of the answer they gave me. So, yeah, that's my response, Effie. What, I mean, did you, sorry, I don't know if I missed it. Did you give us the definition of what a zero-sum game is?
Zero-sum, well, more or less, yes. It is the definition of zero-sum biased thinking is that what the advantage for one side comes at the cost or loss for the other side.
Yeah.
So it's polarizing, as we said at the beginning,
because there's this idea that there's only so much available. That's why that's why this often referred to as a pie. A zero-sum game, you're thinking about a pie, and there's only so much of the pie available to go around, and so only certain people are allowed to have.
Yeah.
So at least the haves and have not.
Yeah, exactly. That to either you're part of it or you're totally out of it. There's no middle thing. But the thing is that there's so many examples. I've been looking up what are some examples of non-zero sum game. Okay, non-zero. And for example, one thing that really stands out is this open, what is it called? Open programming. So
Open source.
yeah, open source. Thank you. Open source programming. Somebody does something and somebody else adds on to that, makes more of it, fixes it, tweaks it, expands on it. And that is an awesome growth for everyone. And that is, that's a situation where the win is way larger than the loss for some individual. And I mean, yeah, so thinking about how as coaches or as service providers, or let's take us, for example, you and me, okay? You and me, Paul. You could be out there doing your coaching thing, and I could be out there doing my coaching thing. And never the twain shall meet, right? But the fact that we're collaborating on this together, we're actually learning more, we're sharing more, we're able to give more. And the sum of these 1 and 1 is not 2, but it's like 3, 4, or 5. So that's anti-zero sum game.
Well, I mean, if our collaboration means, I think for both of us, I mean, there are things that come into play that when we work by ourselves and you want to climb this mountain of becoming a successful online coach, etc. And part of that is, there's the mental stresses that accompany that. So those can sometimes set you back. And being able to work with somebody instead of working against them or competing against them, what you're doing is you open up more, you allow yourself more mental space. This week with us, for example, being able to, after you've had your fantastic holiday away, coming back, and then we're able to chat again and to allow space for creation, because sometimes it can become, I mean, we see so many other coaches on the same journey, working by themselves and hustling and doing this and doing that, whereas working together, you achieve more almost. Well, I know we achieve more, I achieve more working with you. So that is the what is ChatGPT called it? The positive sum game. The positive sum of us working together instead of you doing your thing and I doing my thing.
I was thinking there is a reason, or it does make sense sometimes to have a zero sum game, I mean, look at it from, we don't want to talk politics, but there's only one president, right? So somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose in an election. Or if you have, let's say a job opening and there's only one person, that can be hired for the job or so. So there are reasons where zero sum is actually a situation. And at the same time, I wanted to look it up and I forgot. There was an article I read once about 2 women. They were sharing the CEO position in a company, and they weren't split up like she's only focused on this part of the business and she's only focused on that part of the business. No. They were doing the exact same thing. Only one was working Mondays, Wednesdays, and the other was working Tuesdays and Thursdays, and one would, and that's how they were running the business, as if they were one person. I don't know, I'd have to look it up if that actually worked and if they are still doing that. But it was one thing that just came to mind when we were talking about having the zero sum bias and the zero sum type thinking. The thing about zero sum thinking, what I've been learning here, is that it actually causes more stress for someone. If you're thinking in those terms, it's a lot harder. Just imagine, the 2 of us, we're working together, we're bouncing ideas off each other. If somebody has a bad day, they can say, I'm not at my top form today. So somebody else can pick up for you on that case. But
and motivate.
well, yeah, but
Mm.
it's if you're collaborating like that, you can continue to collaborate, you can continue to move forward. You're not stuck on just one particular type of mindset in that moment, and one particular person's frame of reference at that particular time. And you get to where the both of you start gaining more, even though you're working together individually, you're getting more out of it. And so what I wanted to ask, what I wanted to talk about today as well is how can we get out of a zero-sum thinking? How can we get out of that zero-sum bias? And how can someone move forward out of this, it's me or him, it's this or that, how can we help someone, particularly as coaches, but how can we help ourselves? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would think that we've discussed this before with, having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, understanding, being willing to look at the fact that it's not all about competing. What came up for me, two things. The first thing was, that if you take a horse, a cart horse, they could usually pull about 400 pounds, one cart horse. You take another, so if you put them together, they could only pull 800 pounds. But I think it goes up to 1,200 pounds. So they can do almost 2.5 times the work between the two of them than if one does it together. So I think that's a very good example of, working together achieves more than, considering the other. And then with corporates play the zero-sum game. There's only so many resources, there's only so many profits we have. So one corporate has to take it all and the others have to lose. I mean, a very good example for me always is thinking about Richard Gere in Pretty Woman. I mean, his company was all about cannibalizing smaller companies and destroying them, and basically taking their resources, breaking it up and selling it. And, we have this wonderful thing called B Corps now. And what they do is, it's not just about the profit. The company charter and the way legally for corporations, I think they call it C corporations. Your C Corp, I think so. I must double check that. But they're all about profit. They are legally obliged to do whatever is necessary to make it profit, as much profit for shareholders as they can, which leads to that competitive attitude, leads to it's us versus them, and there's no working together. Whereas with a B Corp, for me, they are a manifestation of the positive sum game. Because what they do, it's about in their corporate charter, in their company charter, it's about profit, it's about people, it's about the people who work in a company, it's about the environment, it's about everything benefiting along those lines, and profit is not the only thing. Whereas with corporates, so zero-sum game is where profit's the only thing, and B Corp is a positive sum game, where you look at your impact and you also look at the impact of what you do now on future generations. So
that's what triggers it for me. When you were saying that, I was thinking zero-sum profit over planet. That's one of those things. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about natural resources on the planet, I mean, natural resources are probably one of those things that can run out. I mean, this is why some people are looking at other planets to start mining there. To what end? I don't know. It's just like this monster that has to keep feeding itself. Whereas if we, now with AI, if you look at other resources, so we are the resources. AI is not the only resource. How we apply it, I mean, I was reading what you were writing about it yesterday, and how there are industries. I mean, like Sam Altman says, we don't ultimately know what is coming down the pipeline 30 years from now, 50 years from now. And there is going to be upheaval in the job markets and the employment markets. But what you said was, like so many changes that has gone before, like with the internet, etc., with social media, jobs were lost and jobs were created. Now, I can only hope that is the situation here. And I also find that thing you shared with me yesterday that you were listening to, how at this point there can be a collaboration with AI and the human part of it. Because I think we still want human interaction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I think the fear of artificial intelligence is maybe in part justified, because what we don't understand, we fear, you know, if we don't know. Think of the movie, what was it called? The shark thingy there. What was the movie with the shark? Jaws.
Jaws?
Jaws in English. Yeah, I'm looking at the word in English, right? Jaws. And we never saw the shark in the movie. We never saw it, but we were scared to death of it, you know? I mean, I remember being in the movie and being just absolutely horrified. You only saw it once at the very end, and then it wasn't actually scary because you could almost tell it was fake. but
Oh, I found it scary.
oh yeah, I thought the whole movie was scary, but the thought is that, you know, what we don't know is what we're afraid of. When we know it and when we understand it, or when we get a better insight into what it means for us, then it takes away the fear. We know how to act, we know how to react, we know how to accept it. Those kind of things come up for us. So I think that's one of the ways that we can get over zero-sum bias, is to stay open, have an open mindset for what are the other options out there. And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and if we're looking at what are the other options, that means that that's what can be innovated here. What if I am a service provider and somebody else is doing the same thing that I am doing, then I might be zero-sum thinking, right? So they're going to take away my customers. They're going to take away my attention from potential customers because they are doing the same advertising that I am doing. They're talking to the same people that I'm talking to, la, 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 you know? And that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, how can I be innovative and different? There's this example of Blockbuster and Netflix. So Blockbuster would send out CDs, and it was like a library of CDs that you could order, and you could watch the CD on your TV at home, and then you'd give it back and stuff. And Netflix started off with the same thing. But what happened? Does anybody know Blockbuster anymore?
Right? Same with Kodak. Yeah.
Same with Kodak. Yeah. And they were more focused on competing with Netflix. So we'll be cheaper, we'll send out faster, we'll have better things on our library, you know, we'll have better movies in our library. And Netflix came up with innovative ideas. We'll deliver differently. And that is where I think the zero-sum thinking is actually causing us more pain, and in the long run causing us to lose our jobs, because you know, it's leaving out the innovation part.
Well, this morning somebody mentioned that they're on groups where coaches are completely turning a blind eye to ChatGPT and what it offers, and it's a fear response, because the thing about it is ChatGPT is here to stay. It's not going away. So I think the people, and I'd like to be one of them, that are being really successful, the ones that are looking for opportunities with ChatGPT, etc. I also, on the side, think that to be friends with the AI at this moment in time is a really good thing, in case they turn out to be, you know, like the ones in Terminator. Do you want to be their friend? So I see a lot of those memes going out on social media, and I think, yeah, rather, because I see a lot of people using please when they prompt ChatGPT. Please, can you provide so keep
Create
on
a partnership with your artificial intelligence thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think the best we can do as coaches is listen. We don't know what's coming down the pipeline. We're exploring it, and you know, we're seeing where it will lead us. But at the same time, with clients, it's a good way to challenge them to innovate. How can they use whatever tools are becoming available to perhaps improve what they're doing, improve their audience? I mean, is it possible? How would they do it? And it's basically just brainstorming with them and helping them find solutions for them to stand out right now. I mean, scary. I don't like having so much attention on myself, but if you can help people in the process, why not? Because that's ultimately why I'm doing what I'm doing and doing all these things is to be in service.
Yeah.
And that's actually, if I think about it, how I see ChatGPT. It's in service.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, and that's what I'm seeing in these workshops that I'm attending, is that you should see artificial intelligence as an assistant, as someone that you actually tell what to do. You can you set certain expectations of how you want it to be, and you instruct it accordingly, but you also have to check and see what's coming out of that. You just can't leave it all to itself.
No,
But
exactly.
but getting back to zero-sum thinking, because I found an example of zero-sum thinking, and I thought this is like, I don't know, how long has Aesop been around? Aesop's tales. There's a story by Aesop fables, and I remember learning Aesop fables. I think it was in the first or the second grade of school, and it's about the dog and the bone. And it's a really quick one. Let me just read it off to you. Okay?
Go for it.
Once upon a time, a hungry dog roamed through a marketplace, searching for food. As he trotted along, his eyes caught sight of a juicy bone lying near a butcher shop. Overwhelmed by greed, the dog immediately clamped his jaws around the bone and refused to let it go. The dog proudly walked away with the bone in his mouth. He couldn't help but notice his reflection in a nearby pond. However, to his dismay, he saw another dog with an identical bone in its mouth. Zero-sum thinking gripped the dog's mind, convincing him that there must be only one bone available. Filled with jealousy, he desperately desired the other dog's bone, believing that it would make him even happier. Driven by this zero-sum bias, the dog decided to snatch the other dog's bone, believing that it would increase his own wealth. As he lunged forward with his teeth bared, he lost his grip on the bone he already possessed, causing it to fall into the pond with a splash. To his dismay, the reflection dog's bone disappeared as well, for it was merely an illusion. The dog was left with nothing but the ripples in the water, and his zero-sum thinking had cost him his own prize. Moral of the story: the dog's zero-sum thinking, driven by jealousy and the belief that one dog's gain would mean another's loss, led to his own loss in the end. It serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us that being consumed by zero-sum bias can blind us to the value of what we already possess and can lead us to losing even that which we desire most. Aesop's tale. I think, that actually tells us in a nutshell what the negative part of zero-sum thinking is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of negatives with zero-sum thinking. And I mean, we all know, for example, I mean, I just bring it back to us in coaching. It's like there's so many coaches competing. And, I sort of sometimes go, oh, you have to be this niche or that niche. And I know what you say about niching, and because from a marketing perspective, but like that's the only place I can fit in because that's where my bone should be. Whereas I still have this idea in my head that as a positive sum game, I can bring positivity and things, and we can do that to so many people. Just bring them insights, bring them to their goals, bring them to live the life they were meant to live. And just by allowing them to see the world through different lenses.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I see as the role of a coach,
Mm.
helping someone to find their resources within themselves and to unleash their creativity to solve the things that are holding them back.
Oh, just a thought there. Zero-sum game is all about resources. And you just said, well, like with coaches, our job is to bring out the resources. And for people to realize that they have so many resources within themselves that they may not sometimes see.
Mhm.
And if they're willing to also look outside themselves for who's available to help them, they may find resources they didn't think was available, so that they may achieve a better outcome than the one they imagined they would achieve.
Mhm. So true. So true. So let's get rid of this fixed pie perceptive,
Yeah,
that,
unless it's a nice one.
yeah, that's wrong. And then the other thing is that this fixed pie makes me think of it, that's one thing, is that it's not fair. That's one of those other zero sum thingies thinking.
Mm.
It's not fair. It means that it has to be equally distributed. All the resources have to be equally distributed. That's not fair. That's not true. It's not.
Explain, elaborate.
Um, it's not fair that that person gets that promotion. I worked just as hard as they did. It's
Mm.
not fair that they're making more money than I am because I am doing the exact same thing as what they are doing. It's not fair that their children are going to private school and mine have to go to public school. It's not fair. La la la. It can go on and on and on. This thing of entitlement and feeling of not enough. That's zero sum thinking.
Mm. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, I always have, years ago, I was reading about Ray Kurzweil and the singularity and, the rise of AI. And it's about happening around the time that they said it would. And the singularity would be when there's a computer with the super intelligence, I think it is, of all humans on the planet combined. So can you imagine that? So all I want, to say about AI and is on a global level, is that if the powers that be can make AI work for the benefit of all, so that it, doesn't become a few that benefit from the power and what AI has to offer. Because if you use AI properly, and we eventually move away from this idea of this is my resources, this is your resources, and one planet, it's our resources, but they have to be applied to the benefit of all. There's no need for people to starve. There's no need for people to go without. Everybody should have, I think, I mean, I know, some people may struggle with this idea, but I think everybody should have the same resources available to live the best life they can. You can give some people everything and they make nothing with it.
Mhm.
But if we can live in a society where the power of AI is used to the benefit of all, that for me would be a positive sum game.
Mhm. That's a lot to unpack right now.
No, I know. So I think we probably sort of, unless you have anything more about the zero sum game, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I wanted to just share with some folks in case they were interested to research this a little bit more. Some of the various scholars that have written about this, and one of them is Dr. Barry Schwartz. He's a professor of psychology and an author of the book The Paradox of Choice: Why More is Less. And his key message is that zero sum thinking especially when it comes to material possessions and external markers of success. So, driving the bigger car and has the bigger diamond or something, that can be detrimental to an individual's overall happiness and life satisfaction, because you are always believing that you have to one up someone else. It's a never ending cycle of dissatisfaction. So
keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses, really, that's what it is. And then there's another researcher, it's Dr. Robert H. Frank. He's an economist and a professor at Cornell University. And he's explored the impact of zero-sum thinking on aspects of society, including resources, economics, politics, and social behavior. And his key message is that zero-sum thinking often leads to suboptimal, to put it nicely, outcomes that are detrimental to overall societal welfare. So if you're always focused solely on the immediate gain, you're neglecting the broader consequences. So we were talking about that, one planet. If you're focusing only on profit, what about the rest, right? And then one that you've probably heard of, he's an organizational psychologist. That's Dr. Adam Grant. And he's a professor at the Wharton School of University in Pennsylvania. And he looks at zero-sum game from the context of workplace dynamics and collaboration. And his message is that zero-sum thinking hampers innovation, collaboration, and overall success within an organization. And that's what we were talking about earlier. When we work together, we are more than the sum of just 1 + 1. And he's done a whole study on this. So there are incredible advantages of the positive sum game. And there's been a lot of research done on this. So and some of the things that some of the advantages again of the positive sum game. So if you can shrink your bias, just shrink it, not have to get rid of it altogether, but if you can shrink it, is that we were talking about earlier, is that you reduce stress and anxiety. Just keeping up with the Joneses, you get rid of that feeling. So you just step out of it. It's like the drama triangle, you've got the perpetrator, you've got the victim, and you've got the rescuer. How do you get out of that? You're either one or the, you're always one. Just step out, you're reducing your stress and your anxiety immediately. And we've talked about mindset. So an abundance mindset is when you're thinking that I have what I need, I'm grateful for what I have, then you're out of that zero-sum thinking automatically. You're out of it. And that improves your own feeling of self-esteem and self-worth, because you have what you need. You're doesn't mean you're not striving for something else, but you're not saying, I have to keep up. I have to be, if they have this, then I have to have that to keep up. So you're actually moving out of that forced feeling of having to play that game, which means that you're also increasing your empathy, because you're not seeing someone else as a competitor. You're increasing your empathy. So
well, it's growing self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Bingo. Yeah.
I mean, that's what our job is to help people achieve. Helping them become more self-aware and to grow their understanding of others and grow their emotional intelligence. I mean, which is all essential part with the growth mindset to actually be able to make this a reality in the world.
Yeah.
Will you share those links in
Sure,
in the comments?
I'll do that in the comments later.
Yeah.
I think we've done quite a comprehensive coverage of this topic for now. Is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, which is interesting. I mean, there's obviously a lot I don't know that I would like to read up more on. So yeah, I was happy to share what I know.
Super. I when you suggested this topic, I was like, how does this fit in with
I didn't suggest this topic, Debbie. I mentioned the topic in conversation. You suggested.
I felt like you suggested this topic, and it was
I just saw it as a challenge to see,
yeah,
what I can come up with
yeah,
and to learn a bit more.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I thought, okay, all right, I'll take it on. I'll take on the
Because
challenge.
for me, ultimately, I was talking about something with somebody else earlier. Really, where the zero-sum game for me comes in is in so many countries' politics. There's a zero-sum game on a small scale in terms of the planet. It's like there's so many natural resources, there's so much available. Let it be for the few and not the many. And I don't understand the mindset where you would allow so many people to suffer just to allow so few to drive around in shiny cars and live in palaces. Never have understood that.
Yeah, yeah,
But I promised not to speak about politics, and
yeah. I want to avoid making that comparison. Shiny cars or something. I mean, it's like,
I'm not having a. I love shiny cars.
yeah,
I'm saying it. If you've earned your shiny car, and that's your business. But if you drive a shiny car because you don't want somebody else to, and you're willing to let them pay the price for
mhm,
your economic gain, there is a huge difference.
yeah. I'll share just briefly before I go. There's this preconception, a prejudice actually, that owning a horse means you're rich. All right. And people who have horses are rich. And I lost that prejudice back in the 1980s when I had my first horse. When I saw that there was a young girl who was making something like 800 D-marks back in the day, 800 D-marks, and she was paying 400 of that for the rent for her horse. And because of that, she lived at home and she paid her parents 200 for rent and food. And so she was giving them, she was a young girl who was studying to become a beautician for hair, and nothing was more important to her than her sport and her horse. And so she wasn't able to pay for the driving school to get her driver's license. So she rode a bicycle to her horse. And that was a priority for her. That was just her priority. She was willing to sacrifice so many other things to keep this horse. So the impression that, all people who have horses are rich, that's bogus. It's not true. And I've seen that so many times. I've seen it. It's where your passion lies is where your resources go. And I think that is what, when we're, Germany is a car country. It's a country of cars. So we have the Audis, we have the VWs, we have Porsche's Austrian, but still, and the Mercedes, all of these cars, it's German.
You're going to offend BMW if you don't mention them.
Okay, well, yeah, they're right around the corner, actually, in Munich. But all of these, it's a car nation. We are a car nation. And it's like everybody loves their cars. It's because, but there's a whole lot of a culture surrounding that, because that's the jobs. Either they're screwing them together, or they're running the robots that are screwing them together, or they're a supplier to the car industry, or in some way or the other is their well-being is entwined with the well-being of the car industry. So yeah, sure. If you're looking at a country that is agricultural, they're going to love their farms and their, what they do there. So I think this is the identity. So maybe that's something to think about for another conversation.
Yes, I think so. I think we've covered zero-sum game quite well.
Yes. So thank you for your time, and
thank you, Debbie. Yeah.
looking forward to any comments that folks have, and we'll be putting this up on YouTube as well.
Yes, please
Okay.
follow us, subscribe, watch us.
Yes, thanks.